A while ago, Netflix released a series called Dahmer, an American Cannibal, which tells the story of the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. This story, by the way, is filled with bizarre details. Although the series is not a documentary, it is based on a real story and attempts to show some of the cruelty committed by Dahmer. Due to the series bringing back a case from years ago, we decided to discuss this case on the channel. So, come with me as I tell you all the details of Jeffrey Dahmer's life. The Cannibal of Music. Born on May 21, 1960, as Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer, we're talking about one of the worst serial killers in history, originating from a middle-class family in the small town of Milwaukee in the United States. From a very young age, Dahmer showed an inclination towards morbid things. When he was a child, his parents noticed that he loved things related to death, to the extent that he even collected carcasses of dead animals he found near his home. More bizarre than that, Dahmer's father noticed how his son became excited upon hearing the sounds of animal bones breaking. In adolescence, the strange boy and his family moved to Bath Township, a small municipality in the state of Ohio. During this time, Dahmer started drinking heavily and quickly became an alcoholic. He frequently drank at school, often hiding beer and other drinks under a large army coat he always wore. During this time, Dahmer also came to terms with his homosexuality, which led to the development of very abnormal sexual fantasies. His desires were as strange as they come, ranging from forced sex with other men to extremely violent sexual acts. He would get aroused just thinking about dominating and controlling another person completely. From this unusual desire, one can't even begin to fathom the horrors Dahmer would commit. As these forbidden desires grew stronger, Dahmer succumbed to them, and a few weeks after high school graduation, he completely gave in to his forbidden desires and committed his first murder. As his parents separated, Dahmer and his mother continued to live in the house they were in, while his father and brother moved elsewhere. When his mother was away, Dahmer would be home alone and do as he pleased. On one of these occasions, he invited an 18-year-old boy named Stephen Martin to have a few beers at his house. Stephen was planning to go to a rock concert in the area, but decided to visit Dahmer's house before the show. After a few beers, he decided to go to the concert, which angered Jeffrey. Before leaving, while Stephen had his back turned, Dahmer struck him in the head and then strangled him to death. But the worst part was yet to come. After killing the young man, Jeffrey undressed and masturbated in front of his corpse. Dahmer dissected Stephen's body, removing and crushing his bones, and dissolving his flesh with acid. This was the first time he had killed someone, an act that would be repeated many times in the years to come. Despite being a terrible murderer, Jeffrey Dahmer presented a calm and pleasant image to the people around him. He appeared to be trying to make a living after high school, even briefly enrolling in Ohio State University. However, he dropped out shortly thereafter due to his issues with alcohol. He also served in the Army for 2 years before his alcoholism became a serious problem. After being discharged from the Army, he lived with his grandmother in the suburbs of Milwaukee. It was later discovered that Dahmer had drugged and abused 2 soldiers during his time in the Army. His crimes continued, and he committed several sexual offenses, such as masturbating in front of minors, drugging men, and then abusing them in gay bathhouses. In September 1987, he returned to murder, this time killing a man named Stephen Tuomi, a 25-year-old. The two met in a bar, and Dahmer convinced him to go to a hotel room where he was staying. According to the police, his initial intention was to drug and rape the man, but Tuomi woke up the next morning with a sore hand and Tuomi's corpse under his bed. After the murder of Stephen Tuomi, Jeffrey Dahmer didn't stop. He began to target young men in gay bars, luring them to his grandmother's house, where he would drug, rape, and then kill them. During this period, he killed 3 more young men. He was eventually arrested for sexually abusing a 13-year-old boy. This accusation led to Dahmer serving 8 months in prison. Even while in prison, his desire to kill only increased. The problem was that simply killing wasn't enough for him. He enjoyed performing sexual acts and eventually began collecting keepsakes from his victims. This practice began when he met a 24-year-old model named Anthony Sears. The two met in a bar, and after going home with Dahmer, Anthony was drugged, raped, and strangled to death. As a memento of the crime, Jeffrey kept Anthony's head and genitals in jars filled with acetone. When Dahmer moved to his own house, he took the preserved body parts with him. Over the next 2 years, while living alone in a small house in the city center, he committed most of his 17 murders. His modus operandi was often the same. He would lure young men to his home, sometimes offering money to pose for pictures. In reality, what Dahmer did was introduce them to death in a cruel way. The more people he killed, the colder and more depraved he became. He started taking photos of his dead victims, and also began dissolving the flesh and bones of the young men he killed. As a keepsake, he kept the skulls of his victims. And just when you thought it couldn't get any more bizarre, Dahmer became interested in cannibalism. He began to store parts of his victims' bodies in his refrigerator. Even with so many young men mysteriously disappearing, no one suspected that Jeffrey was a terrible serial killer until July 22, 1991. On that day, the police finally discovered his crimes. Dahmer lured a 32-year-old man named Tracy to his house, just as he had done with his other victims. He offered money for Tracy to pose for photos, but when they arrived at Dahmer's house, Tracy was taken by surprise and forced to undress. Terrified, Tracy convinced Dahmer that they were friends and that there was no need to threaten him with a knife. Once Dahmer lowered his guard, Tracy punched the serial killer in the face and ran out the front door. When he encountered a police car on the street, he told them everything that had happened, and the authorities went to Dahmer's house. There, the police found photos of dismembered bodies, and they also discovered 4 decapitated heads in the kitchen and a total of 7 skulls in the refrigerator. Various body parts, including 2 hearts, were found in one of the rooms. The police also found a drum that emitted a strong odor. Upon inspection, the police found 3 dismembered human bodies being dissolved in acid. Once Jeffrey Dahmer was arrested, he confessed to all 17 murders he had committed. He faced 15 charges and received 15 life sentences. He quickly became famous as one of the worst serial killers in history. On November 28, 1994, while in prison, Jeffrey Dahmer experienced a taste of his own medicine. He had contemplated suicide multiple times while incarcerated, but he never had the opportunity. That was until he met another inmate named Christopher Scarver. Scarver brutally beat Dahmer to death with a metal bar in the prison. According to reports, Dahmer didn't resist or attempt to defend himself, almost as if he had accepted his fate. And thus, Jeffrey Dahmer's series of murders came to an end. If you want to learn more details about this case, you can watch the Netflix series, which has received many accolades. I'll end it here, but I'll see you soon on the channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until the next video.